Recently, I stumbled across a film from 2013. Now, someone earlier today told me I really needed to get a little more up to date with my films, and I'm not arguing, but I saw a movie entitled About Time. And in the opening scene of this movie, the 21-year-old main character, Tim Lake, not Tim Skink, Tim Lake, learns from his father that the men in their family have the astonishing ability to, wait for it, time travel. Now, Tim assumes it's a practical joke, but quickly discovers that it's true. Tim also discovers that there are several hard and fast parameters to this amazing ability. For one, he can only go backward, not forward in time. And he can only return to moments in his own life and revisit them. You see, the Lake men weren't omnipotent, but they could alter situations and outcomes just by revising their own words and actions. So what this meant was that Tim had been given the gift of the perpetual do-over. Any moments of regret or even embarrassment, he could simply return to and live over again, correcting them with the benefit of hindsight. Now, as you might imagine, this film had quite a few plot holes, and it was pretty sentimental. It's also rated R, by the way, in case you're thinking about showing it to your children. You might want to reconsider that, but nevertheless, it serves as a kind of a 1.5-hour thought experiment about how we could approach life if we could fix whatever we wanted. You see, in the film, the power of do-over takes the sting out of all kinds of things for Tim. Eventually, it teaches him to cope with the day-to-day fears and worries that can so easily dominate our lives. Tim still experienced pain and loss and tears, but he learned to live fully in each moment, to focus on family and friends, to love well and embrace life with all its imperfections. Now, in today's gospel, Jesus grapples with pain and loss and tears as he confronts some of the very real and difficult parameters of this human life that he embraced. You see, Jesus had healed many, many people over the course of his ministry, but sickness still existed. Death was still real, and death had just robbed him of a beloved friend. Death was also very much on the disciples' minds because, you see, in traveling back to Judea to see Mary and Martha and Lazarus, Jesus was returning to the region where the religious leaders had just tried to kill him. Jesus was a marked man, and the disciples knew their lives were in danger as well. But nevertheless, they went. And in Bethany, they encountered grief, but also anger. Lazarus' sisters both chided Jesus. "Rabbi," they said, "you could have stopped this. All this suffering could have been averted if you only had come sooner." And you know, Jesus doesn't argue with them. He never denies that death and suffering and loss are real. In fact, he weeps bitterly over it. But Jesus uses this moment to lift the vision of his friends and followers. He wants them to learn to see death differently. Because if God is truly Lord of all, then God is Lord even of death. And then, in a manifestation of God's power and a foretaste of Jesus' own resurrection, he calls to his friend from the tomb, "Lazarus, come out." And Lazarus emerges, still wrapped in his grave clothes. Astonishing. So, what does all this mean for us here today? Well, for one thing, it points to the reality that you and I, like Lazarus and even Jesus, exist within the limitations of humanity. But Jesus shows us there is more, far more, to this existence than meets the eye. Because in God's kingdom, in which we all dwell, death does not have the final say. Yes, we must endure suffering. Every one of us will grapple with loss in one form or another. But rather than rage against this reality, we can learn to see it as Jesus does. We can experience and even accept loss, knowing that God walks with us through our suffering, loves us, weeps with us in our pain, knowing that ultimately God transforms our brokenness into something astonishingly beautiful and powerful. How does this transformation, this new life out of death happen? Well, sometimes it occurs immediately, miraculously, as it did with Lazarus. Other times it can take months or years, even a lifetime of healing and prayer and growth. But always, always, this kind of transformation happens when we entrust ourselves completely to Christ, to Jesus, who perfectly reveals the Father. It happens when we run to, rather than away from, our good and loving God, even in our worst circumstances. Jesus said it plainly to Martha, "Did I not tell you that if you believed, you would see the glory of God?" Friends, neither you nor I can travel back in time. That's a literary device, a movie plot. But we have something far, far better. Because you and I are redeemed and loved by one who is not bound by time or space, who can take the worst that life serves us and transform it into new life, new hope for God's glory and for our good. Jesus' redemption is far more powerful, far more transformative than any do-over. And it is real, my friends, truly real. Amen.